Right, so hello and welcome back to Books and Things, and welcome to another video. And today I want to tell you about some of my most anticipated historical fiction releases coming up this year. So as usual, I am a bit late with this video. January is nearly over and a few of these books are out already. But nonetheless, I did want to finally get around to putting up a video talking about some of the most anticipated historical fiction books that are coming out this year for me. I have picked out 26 historical novels coming out in 2024 that I think sound amazing, and I thought I would just talk you through them today. I decided to focus just on historical fiction again this year, as I did for my anticipated releases video at the beginning of 2023, just because there are so many books coming out in any given year that sound great. And as someone who reads a lot of historical fiction and who writes historical fiction as well, I find it a little bit easier to get my grip on what is coming out in a year if I just focus on historical fiction. However, saying that, before I get on to the 26 works of historical fiction coming out in 2024, I did just want to mention one novel that is not historical, because my most anticipated book of the year is not a work of historical fiction. It is a science fiction book by an author who has previously written historical fiction, and that is The Mars House by Natasha Pulley. This is coming out in March and it's being published by Orion. Throughout this video, any publication dates, months I give and any publishers are for the UK, just because that's where I'm based. And the description of The Mars House by Natasha Pulley says that it is a queer sci-fi novel about a refugee from Earth and a xenophobic Mars politician who agree to a fake marriage after a media encounter damages both their reputations. And that sounds fascinating. So I love Natasha Pulley. She is probably my favourite living author. Maybe Diane Setterfield would give her a run for her money, but I really think her books are fantastic. I've read all of her novels so far and I absolutely loved them. The Watchmaker of Filigree Street probably remains my favourite, but the other 4 books that she has released were also absolutely fantastic, and everything she writes is just incredible and so entirely up my street. As I said, in the past, Natasha Pulley has been a writer of historical fiction, though sometimes with a speculative element, and I am really excited to see what she does in The Mars House in her first step into science fiction. I'm just prepared for it to be amazing because everything Natasha Pulley writes is amazing, and I'm very excited. But now, onto the historical fiction. So to start off with, I have some books that are coming out in January, by which I mean have already come out in January because I am very late to filming this. And the first 2 I want to mention are books that I have already read because I got sent proof copies of them and read them in 2023. And first here we have The Beholders by Hester Musson, which came out on the 18th of January, I think, and was published by Fourth Estate. And this is a fantastic debut historical novel set in the 1870s about a young maid who gets kind of drawn into some complicated secrets of the house that she is working at. We know from the very beginning of the book that 4 months after Harriet starts working at this house, the mistress of the house will be accused of murdering her own child, and then we go back in time and follow Harriet through her diary and find out exactly what happened at Fenton Hall. I thought The Beholders was absolutely fantastic. It was genuinely one of my favourite books of 2023. I'll put the final cover up on the screen because this is a proof copy, and if I can find it I'll put a picture of the back cover of the final cover up on the screen because I gave a quote and it's on the back and that makes me happy. Somehow seeing my name on someone else's book makes me feel much more like a real author than seeing it on my own. But anyway, I thought The Beholders was amazing. I really heartily recommend this. It was so good. Just, yeah. Fantastic book. And then another January release that I have already read is this. This is Miss Austen Investigates by Jessica Bull. Again, I'll put the final cover up on the screen because this is a proof copy, and I love this very much too. Another book that made my favourite books of 2023. This is a Jane Austen themed murder mystery novel. So it's a work of historical fiction set in the late 18th century following 19-year-old Jane Austen and what she does when a murder occurs at a ball and she decides to solve it. But Jane Austen approaches solving this murder mystery with all the energy and wild, chaotic thought that Catherine Morland from Northanger Abbey would approach solving a murder mystery. And I really love how Jessica Bull in this book combines a lot of fantastic elements, you know, all of these details of Jane Austen's life and the family and friends around her, people who I kind of feel like I know from Jane Austen's letters and biographies about Jane Austen, and she combines that with this fantastic sort of homage to Northanger Abbey in a way, and then she also combines that with just a wonderful, cozy murder mystery that is really, really interesting to solve. I just thought this was really fantastic and like such a treat for anyone who likes Jane Austen's books and for anyone who's interested in Jane Austen's life. And personally, for me, as someone who, like I said, have read lots of Jane Austen's letters and read lots of biographies of her, this felt so true to Jane Austen as a person, as far as I can tell. Like, this feels like the Jane Austen and the Austen family that I know from my own love of Jane Austen and interest in her life, and that just made me so happy. So I'd highly, highly recommend this. Fantastic book, and very much one to pick up this Jane Austen July, if not before. Miss Austen Investigates came out on the 25th of January, and I was lucky enough to go along to the book launch, which was huge fun. This is published by Penguin Michael Joseph, who are my publisher as well. This is just such a treat of a book. Like, anyone who loves Jane Austen will just get such joy from this. I can't recommend it enough. The other 3 January releases I want to mention, I haven't read yet, so I have a little bit less to say about them. The one I did want to mention is The House on Rye Lane by Susan Allott, and this book is published by the Borough Press, who are part of HarperCollins, and it came out on the 18th of January. And the only thing I really know about it is that it is a drama that spans over 165 years and connects 3 families who live in a Peckham townhouse during that time. And I just think that sounds really, really interesting. I just feel like that sounds like a great concept, and I think I'll really enjoy like the elements of the kind of history of South London that are present in that. So I'm looking forward to that one. I think that'd be a great read. The next book I want to mention is Death on the Lusitania by R.L. Graham, and this book is set in 1915, and it is a kind of Agatha Christie style murder mystery retelling of the sinking of the RMS Lucania. This was a real event. This was a ship that sunk in 1915 when sailing from New York to Liverpool. And I'm really excited to read this for 2 reasons. One, because I always really enjoy a historical murder mystery, and 2, because R.L. Graham is the pen name for a husband and wife team who have written together, Marilyn Livingstone and Morgan Witzel. And this husband and wife team have written lots of books together under various pseudonyms, one of which was Ruthie Lewis, and they wrote a book together called The Orphans of Bell Lane, which is a historical saga novel, which was one of the first books I ever worked on as assistant editor in publishing. Like, I think The Orphans of Bell Lane was probably maybe like the second fiction book I ever had anything to do with in my career, and it was fantastic. It's a really fantastic story set in the Victorian period, and I just had a blast working on it. And when I was looking through the Bookseller, which is the industry newspaper for the kind of publishing industry in the UK, I spotted this book and it said it was written by a husband and wife team, and for some reason I just thought, oh, I wonder if it's them, and I looked and it was. And I was very sad to see that Marilyn Livingstone had passed away last year, but I'm really keen to read Death on the Lusitania because I just think it sounds fantastic, and I know that they were a fantastic team who just wrote wonderful books together, so I'm really looking forward to reading that one, hopefully at some point in 2024. And I can't remember if I said, but that was another 25th of January release coming out from Pan Macmillan. The next book I'm excited to read is Loot by Tania James. This is apparently a heist novel set in 18th century India about a 17-year-old toymaker who is ordered to make a musical tiger for the Sultan's sons and then ends up pursuing it to England after British soldiers loot Mysore. And that just sounds like a fantastic, fascinating premise for a book. I'm really excited for this one. I think it'll be a really, really interesting read. This is coming out from Harvel Secker, who are part of Penguin Random House. Came out last week, I think, on the 25th of January, and another one that I'm very excited to read. Okay, we're into February now, so these are books that have not yet come out. And the first one I want to mention is one that I have read already because I had a proof copy, and that's this. This is The Bone Hunters by Joanne Byrne. This book is set in Lyme Regis in 1824, and we're following Ada Winters, who is an amateur geologist. She loves to comb the beaches of Lyme and see what she can find, but because she is a woman, she's not taken seriously, and she wants to kind of join the Geological Society, but finds it very, very difficult to have anyone listen to her, and so she ends up teaming up with a male geologist in order to uncover what she thinks is a very important find on the cliffs, but things get more complicated and messy than that quite quickly. This is a really well-written, powerful historical novel, the kind of book that I think you would enjoy if you like Liz Hyder and Elizabeth McNeill. I feel like Joanne Byrne's writing style is quite similar, and I just really enjoyed this. I thought it was a great book, really, really good read, definitely one I'd recommend. And this is being published by Sphere, who are part of Little Brown, who are part of Hachette. Then coming up on the 1st of February from Tinder Press, who are also part of Hachette, is A Sign of Her Own by Sarah Mast, which I think sounds fascinating. And this book looks at Alexander Graham Bell's invention of the telephone, but it specifically looks at the hidden history of the deaf community's involvement in this, focusing on a young woman who is kind of struggling to accept her identity as a deaf woman, which sounds like a really interesting premise. I'm very excited for this one. I feel like it could be a very fascinating read, so looking forward to getting to that one at some point too. Coming out on the 15th of February from Magpie, who are part of Simon & Schuster, is The Sleeping Beauties by Lucy Ash. And this is a kind of historical suspense novel set during the Second World War about the relationship between a mother and daughter and about jealousies within the world of ballet. I've been meaning to read Lucy Ash's first book, Clara and Livia. That was one of my anticipated releases for 2023, and I haven't yet, but The Sleeping Beauties sounds wonderful as well. Another exciting historical fiction release coming up on the 15th of February from Quercus, who are also part of Hachette, is The Foxwife by Yang Shi-Chu. This book is set in 19th century China, and it follows the story of a mother who is seeking revenge, but it kind of like blends folklore and realism. So that sounds really interesting to me. I think this is one to be excited about. Moving on to March, one book I have been hearing a lot about in other people's anticipated books videos for 2024 is The Warm Hands of Ghosts by Catherine Arden. So this book is a kind of historical fantasy novel, I guess, or a historical fiction novel with speculative elements, and it's set during the First World War, and it follows a Canadian nurse who is searching for her brother who is presumed dead. And I should say The Warm Hands of Ghost is being published by Century, who are part of Penguin Random House. Catherine Arden is a very well-loved author, best known for her trilogy that began with The Bear and the Nightingale. I haven't read anything else by her, but I always hear fantastic things, and the premise of this sounds really, really appealing to me. So maybe I'll get to this at some point in 2024/2025. To be honest, I'm going to try very hard in 2024 to get my physical TBR down, which means I'm probably not going to be buying and reading that many of these this year, but I will be looking out for all of them in the future, and hopefully I'll get to them at some point. However, one 2024 release I definitely will be getting to this year is this. This is The Great Divide by Cristina Henriquez. The publishers, Fourth Estate, who are part of HarperCollins, have very kindly sent me a review copy, and I haven't read it yet, but as you can see, my bookmark is in the front because this is the next book I'm going to read, so hopefully you'll hear about it in my January wrap-up, and I'm very excited for this one. I think it'll be a really, really interesting book. So this book is set in the very early 20th century and looks at the building of the Panama Canal, and specifically the kind of labourers and workers who were involved in the building of it. I think this will just be a really, really interesting story, kind of looking at an interesting historical event and the stories that don't get told about it. So I'm really, really excited for this one, and like I said, this is going to be the next book I read, so I should have a lot more to say about it in my January wrap-up. And this one is coming out on the 14th of March. Then coming out on the 28th of March is The Divorcees by Rowan Beard. This book is set in the 1950s in the USA, and it follows Lois, who wants to get divorced and dissolve her unhappy marriage, and she ends up living for 6 weeks at a divorce ranch with several other women who want to get divorced. So one reason why I want to read this is because the premise sounds very intriguing, but also this is being published by Manila Press, who are part of Bonnier Books UK, and I really, really trust Manila Press's taste in books, and I really trust their list. I used to work there many years ago, and I just think the commissioning editors on Manila Press have very good taste, and I just think The Divorcees sounds really interesting, so I'm very excited for this one, and I definitely have high hopes. So moving on to April, I have another book I've read already, and that is this. This is The Library Thief by Kushenga Shende, which is coming out on the 9th of April, being published by Sphere, who are part of Little Brown, who are part of Hachette. So many publishers within publishers in the UK. Anyway, The Library Thief is set in late Victorian Britain, and we're following Florence, who is a young woman who, after her father evicts her from their home, ends up intercepting a letter from one of his clients. He's a bookbinder, and she decides that because she has nowhere else to go, she will take this letter and she will go to the library of Rose Hall and claim that she is there to rebind the books. And so she turns up at Rose Hall kind of begging for a job, and ends up residing there in order to rebind the whole library. And this is a book which is about books, and also about kind of identity and fitting in. It starts off feeling like a kind of quintessential Gothic novel. It's clear there are a lot of mysteries at Rose Hall and things that Florence isn't really aware of, sort of secrets that the master may be keeping from her. But as the book goes on, it kind of becomes more about identity, and it's very much a book about kind of finding a place for yourself in the world, and learning more about yourself. It's a real coming of age story, I suppose. and it's just a really good read. So another one I would definitely recommend. And then coming out also at the beginning of April, I think on the 11th of April, is James by Percival Everett, a book that I've been hearing a lot about. This is one that has been turning up in everyone's kind of anticipated books for 2024 videos. This book is set in the 1860s in the US, and it is a retelling of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. And it focuses on the perspective of James, an enslaved man who runs away after he hears that he is about to be sold. Now, I have not actually read The Adventures of the Huckleberry Finn yet, but I do really want to, and it is a book that's on my TBR and that I'll probably read this year. So I think after I've read Huckleberry Finn, it would be really interesting to read James and kind of think about them in comparison to each other. Maybe I'll even try and read them back to back, we'll see. Regardless, I think this sounds like a really interesting book. It's coming out from Mantle, who are part of Pan Macmillan, on the 11th of April in the UK, and I feel like it's one that everyone's going to be talking about. Another book I'm sure everyone will be talking about when it comes out this April is The Household by Stacey Halls. This is another book being published by Manila Press, who are part of Bonnier Books UK, and this is Stacey Halls' 4th novel. And this book is set in Victorian England, and it focuses on the house for fallen women that Charles Dickens built. And in this book, we're following both the women who come to the house and also a woman named Angela, a real-life historical figure who is involved in the management of this house. And what can I say? Stacey Halls is a truly, truly fantastic writer. What a great premise. You should all be very, very excited for this one. Another April publication I'm excited for, this time from Scribe Publications, is Manny and the Baby by Verezzo. So this book is kind of dual timeline narrative, focusing on two sisters who get caught up in the kind of new black ambition movement in London in the 1930s, and then two young black men figuring out their kind of identity and their lives in Bath in 2012. And that premise sounds fantastic to me, and I also love this cover, so another one I'm very excited for. And the final book I wanted to mention coming out in April, this time from Doubleday, who are part of Penguin Random House, is Spitting Gold by Carmela Lokis. And this is apparently a queer gothic historic debut novel set in 19th century Paris, following two sisters who are con artists who pose as gifted mediums to like pull off a final last trick, I suppose. And this just sounds really, really great and really fun, so I'm excited about that. Moving on to May, and the final book in this video that I have already read, I wanted to talk about The Theatre of Glass and Shadows by Anne Corlett. This does now have a final cover, so I'll put that up on the screen as well, and this is a wonderful, wonderful, rich, atmospheric, fantastic book, which is set in an alternative London where a lot of South London is taken up with the Theatre District, which is a sprawling, immersive theatre production that has been running for centuries. And we're following a young woman called Juliet, who after her father's death finds out that he might have had something to do with the Theatre District, and so travels there to find out what that might have been. This is just so great, so well paced, so atmospheric, so fun. Another wonderful book that made it onto my best books of 2023. I highly, highly recommend it. What a great novel. And I should say this is being published by Black and White Publishing, who are part of Bonnier Books UK. Another book I'm very excited for, this time from Cornerstone, who are part of Penguin Random House, is House of Shades by Leanne Dillsworth. I read her debut novel, Theatre of Marvels, and really, really loved it, so I'm very, very excited for her second book. And this is set in London in 1833, and it follows Doctress Hester Reeves, who is offered a life-changing commission. She ends up leaving behind her husband to move to an imposing house where she has to try and heal the master of the house. But I expect this house is going to hold lots of mysterious secrets as well. This sounds fantastic, and like I said, I just loved her debut novel, Theatre of Marvels, so I'm very, very excited for this one. Moving on to June, one book that I think sounds really fantastic is The Ballad of Jack Wat Delahaye by Brian E. Cameron. This is a debut novel coming out from Little Brown, who are part of Hachette. This is set in the Caribbean in the 17th century, and it follows a woman who is one of the kind of like few supposed female pirates from that time, and that just sounds fantastic. I feel like this is just going to be a great adventure, and I am very, very excited for that. Another book I'm excited for is The King's Witches by Kate Foster. This is coming from Mantell, who are part of Pan Macmillan, on the 6th of June, and I really loved Kate Foster's debut novel, The Maidens, which I read last year and thought was fantastic, so I'm very excited for her second. And this book is set in the 16th century and follows the betrothal of Princess Anne of Denmark and King James VI of Scotland, but obviously the title does suggest that there is going to be something to do with witchcraft and witch trials involved involved in here too, and I'm sure it'll be a fantastic book. Like I said, I just love The Maiden, so I'm very, very excited for Kate Foster's next novel. Then another follow-up from an author who I've loved before is The Burial Plot by Elizabeth McNeill. This is coming out from Picador, again part of Pam Macmillan, on the 6th of June, and I really love Elizabeth McNeill's books. I really adored both The Doll Factory and The Circus of Wonders, and The Burial Plot sounds great too. This book is set in London in 1839 and follows a woman who makes her money off the fact that the cemeteries are full. Not exactly sure how, but that sounds very mysterious. But it sounds like she ends up getting a position somehow as a lady's maid in a house that is full of secrets, and I do love a house full of secrets, so very, very excited for this one. I think it'll be a really great read. Another wonderful sounding novel is Daughter of Calamity by Rosalind M. Lynn. This is coming up from Tor, also part of Pam Macmillan, lots of Pam Mac books in a row here. This is coming on the 18th of June, and this book is set in 1930s jazz age Shanghai, which definitely to begin with has me intrigued. This is about a young woman who works as a showgirl in a nightclub and her investigations when several cabaret dancers are attacked. This just sounds really, really intriguing. Definitely one I'm excited for. Then coming up in July, we have Babylonia by Costanza Casati. This is being published by Penguin Michael Joseph, who are my publisher, and I really loved Costanza's debut novel, Clytemnestra. I thought it was just fantastic, so I'm very, very excited to read her follow-up. And this book apparently follows the rise to power of the only female ruler of the Assyrian Empire, and that just sounds great, doesn't it? I'm very, very excited for this one. I don't need to know anything more than that. Talking about books where I don't need to know anything more, coming out from HarperCollins in August is the new Sophie Irwin novel, How to Lose a Lord in 10 Days. There is no blurb online for this book, there is only a title, but I only need a title to know that this will be great. I really loved A Lady's Guide to Fortune Hunting, which was Sophie Irwin's debut novel. I haven't yet read A Lady's Guide to Scandal, which was her second book, but I really need to read that at some point very soon. And I'm very excited to read her third Regency rom-com, How to Lose a Lord in 10 Days, because doesn't that just sound delightful? What a great title. And then finally, another book coming up in August from Sphere, who are part of Little Brown, is The Heir of Venus by Laura Shepperson. This is a kind of Greek/Roman myth retelling about the end of Troy and the beginning of Rome, following a few different people who are kind of caught up in the complex political events of the time. I have Laura Shepperson's debut novel, The Heroines, on my shelves. I haven't yet read it, but I'm really excited for it, and I'm definitely going to read it quite soon. So once I've read that, I'm excited to get to her second novel, The Heir of Venus too. Sounds wonderful. So there we go. Those are lots of works of historical fiction coming out in 2024 that I am very, very excited about. Saying that, I do also really want to try and get my physical TBR down in 2024, so I think it'll be a fine balancing act, but a lot of these books do sound wonderful and I'm very excited to read them. Anyway, I think that's all for now. Do let me know if you've heard of any of these books, if you think any of them sound exciting, if there's anything you're especially looking forward to that's coming out in 2024, and that's all for now. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll be back very soon with another bookish video.